All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you all so much for joining us for Left Bank Books presents another virtual celebrity story time. We welcome Children's Africana Book Awards notable author Leah Henderson, who will read aloud and talk about how they made their new picture book, A Day for Rememberin, inspired by the true events of the first Memorial Day. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Leah Henderson, and you for your outpouring of love for our bookstore. Left Bank Books offers curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world even. And we have reopened our doors so you can come in and explore all of our fantastic books and find this beautiful book on our shelves. We are very happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a copy for you or for all of your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating. It allows us to keep this event series going, bringing you fantastic authors. So thank you for your support. We need your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis, including Cliff Helm, who will be joining us in a moment. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, at the end of the event, so please type your questions as a comment. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook and YouTube to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. Our June calendar is packed with fantastic events for readers of all ages. And now I would like to welcome our youth specialist, Cliff Helm, who will welcome our author. Hi, Cliff.
Hello.
Hi.
I'd like to welcome everyone, and I would also like to introduce the book that we are here to hear, A Day for Rememberin, a moving tribute to the little-known history behind the very first Memorial Day, illustrated by Coretta Scott King Award winner Floyd Cooper, and written by Leah Henderson, who is here with us today. Leah Henderson writes for young readers of all ages, and her books have been named a Children's Africana Book Awards notable and a Bank Street Best Book. Leah holds an MFA in writing and is on the faculty of Spalding University's graduate writing program. She resides in Washington, D.C. And if you would join me in welcoming Leah, I'd be so happy to do so. Hello.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I am going to attempt to share my screen so I can tell you a little bit of the journey to creating this story. So let's cross our fingers and hope this works. Can you see that?
We can, yes.
Okay, perfect. So Day for Rememberin came about while I was researching for another book. I am someone who is always getting sidetracked and going down tunnels, but I love history and I love research. And one day I came across this image and I was immediately captivated and wanted to know exactly where it was from and what it was about. And I did a little bit of digging, did a little bit more digging to come to find that it was actually about Flag Day ceremony in 1899 or the 1900s in Hampton, Virginia. But the thing was, this picture was always associated with Decoration Day, for a special Decoration Day, which we now call Memorial Day, back in Charleston, South Carolina in 1865. And so when I noticed that it kept being referred, kept coming in combination with this Memorial Day back in Charleston, I started wondering, why all these Black children in a field with one holding a flag? Why would that be associated with this particular Memorial Day? And so kept doing some more digging. And then I came to learn that there was a Memorial Day remembrance event that happened on May Day in Charleston that was led by 3,000 Black children from the Freeman School. And I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world? Why have I never heard of this? And so because I love research and I love history, I did more digging. And I came to understand that there are a number of places that have laid claim to being the first Memorial Day, right? So in 1825, and so look at these dates. In 1866, on April 25th, in 1866, in Columbus, Mississippi, a group of women, I think it was about 3 or 4 women, decorated the graves of fallen Confederate soldiers as well as Union soldiers. So soldiers from the North and soldiers from the South. Also, May 5th in 1866 lays claim, and that's been the official birthplace of Memorial Day because it was a larger group event. And then another one that became kind of known as the kind of cementing of this holiday was in 1868 at Arlington National Cemetery. And so when I looked at those, then I looked back at that date of that May Day celebration, May 1st, 1865. And I started doing more digging, and I came across articles that talked about this collective event by a community of formerly enslaved men, women, and children who thought that it was very important to remember the Union soldiers that had died in part trying to deliver their freedom or be part of their deliverance from enslavement. And so I was even more fascinated. And of course, I started doing research on this particular area in Charleston, which was the Washington Race Course, where this event took place. And this race course was a very well-known race course at the time in Charleston, where very wealthy white men and women would watch horse races. But during the Civil War, that racetrack turned into a Union prison, and they kept prisoners there in the open field. And I became even more curious about what was happening during this time, during the Civil War. And then at the end of the Civil War, those Union soldiers that were still living were freed, but the rest of them that had died, unfortunately, were put in a mass grave. But what happened at that time was 28 Black men decided that they were going to show their respect to these gentlemen and give them each their individual headstones. And so when I was reading this and thinking about this, I was like, okay, but how do I translate this for children? What is it that I could possibly say? How could I frame this in a way, because it's such an important story, that kids could hear it as well? And so I started thinking about how I could maybe transform this nonfiction into a fictionalized world. And you see this little boy who's looking right at you. He became the start of it all for me. And so I went back to my research and I started taking notes, and I started looking at articles and diary entries and newspaper clippings and all kinds of things, and thinking about how this little boy would view this moment. And so Eli was that character for me. And he came to life for me from the very beginning. And so I'm going to read you a couple of pages from A Day for Rememberin. This is the first page of it. 9 days in a row, Papa up early and gone again. I still can't go with him, though. He said, Eli, school's where you need to be, reading and counting. But I am counting, right here, day 9. Not following after Papa is harder than holding a hot potato in my hands. He said important work has to be done, man's work. I rose on my toes then, pushing out my chin, stretching as tall as my 10-year-old self could. But it made no difference. I imagine him out there standing up to folks who spit in our faces, call us names, or try to run us out our home, mad because we aren't enslaved no more. Or I think of him putting out fires and keeping order with the 21st Colored Infantry, Union soldiers, brown like us, who marched up Meeting Street, holding their heads high in victory, especially the ones who'd been enslaved here in Charleston. They were some of the first to come when the mayor surrendered the city to the Union. No use begging to follow Papa, though. Mama will only fuss. Eli, now you have the hard-earned right to learn, and it's what's going to get you beyond. Master's locked away learning because knowledge is its own freedom. You're going to school, and no more words are getting spilt about it. So at this point in the story, what you're learning about is that the Union soldiers were victorious. And this is the moment where African Americans, enslaved African Americans, were given their freedom, or they were to be given their freedom at that point. It took a long time in some cases for them to actually be given the emancipation, but this was the start of it all. And so Eli, for me, was right there at that moment, really curious about what was going on and what was happening. And so a couple of pages later, wake up, Eli. Today you're coming with me. Day 10. I spring out of bed like beans in a skillet and jump into my britches. Something important must be happening if Papa is letting me miss even 1 second of school, my hard-earned right, and Mama isn't putting up no fuss. With molasses smeared cornbread sliding down my throat, I race to catch Papa. His long strides are met by others as more men join us, their boots crunching against pebbles on the hard road. My new schooling helps me count 28 men in all. Shoulders back, chests out, they stomp along, ready to do the real important business Papa talks about. Business he thinks I'm old enough to know too. You need to see the work we's doing before it's all done, he says. Without a word, Papa and the other men get to digging, hammering, and cutting wood. Papa points to the fence where some of my schoolmates have joined their papas too. Help with the whitewashing, Eli. I drag my feet, though, wanting to stay by Papa's side, but he rushes around doing more work in a minute than he'd done in 3 hours on Master's land. An old usher from our church pushes a painting brush in my hand, and I get to working too. As the sun beats our backs, the men sing in heavy, deep voices that rattle the dirt. So that's a portion of this larger story that talks about them going to do this respectful reburying of the Union soldiers. And then on the following day, nearly 10,000, including some Union loyalists, some white Union loyalists, they all marched to the gravesite. And right over the gravesite, they've put this this archway that says Martyrs of the Racecourse. And they go in single file singing and dropping flowers to remember the Union soldiers that died in part for their freedom. And so this is how A Day for Rememberin' came to be in my heart. And it became a book for me that I felt like, or a manuscript, I should say, before it was sold, was a manuscript that I felt it was so important to hear this part of history, a part of history that has been overshadowed, a part of history that in some cases, when I was doing my research, I found that a long time ago, when someone was inquiring about this particular event and asked some women of the Daughters of the Confederacy if this event had actually taken place in Charleston, these women actually were like, "Oh, I don't recall. I can't remember." And this event actually had taken place just a few years before. So it's not likely that an event with 10,000 African Americans walking with wreaths and flowers was going to be forgotten and not talked about, but they realized that it was a moment in history that they did not want to share. And so my hope today is that this story is shared far and wide and that we learn a little bit more about our American history. And it also makes us curious about what other history has been either covered up or put to the side. And I always like to say, what are the stories outside of the frame of the history books? So thank you so much for listening to a bit of A Day for Rememberin'. And I hope you all have some questions for me.
Well, I appreciate you reading that. It's wonderful. And to get it behind the scenes. It's fantastic. I love the book, and I guarantee you I will be sharing it far and wide for many years to come. It's a beautiful story, and it's wonderfully illustrated. I greatly appreciate you for the book because it is history that I did not know. And I too wonder just how much I don't know and and just don't have access to.
Yeah.
It's wild. And I appreciate the effort. Anyone who was willing to tell those stories. It's a godsend.
I'm trying.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have to do it alone. Yes, you're on the back end, and we on the as bookseller put it in people's hands.
And I appreciate you.
So it's I do have a couple of questions for you. Is it purposefully meta the idea that education is so important? Eli's parents hammer into him like my parents and their parents and generations of parents have done, hammering in the importance of education, and just the idea that education is what brought you to this story and this book, and constantly pushing the learning more and introducing more people to.
Yeah, I think like on a couple of levels. First, to be denied learning for so many generations, right? And the generations of African Americans who snuck and read or snuck and learned and understood how liberating knowledge was, that they wanted it for their children, their friends, their peers, all they wanted everyone to have that. And so in Eli's case, his mom had snuck to read, right? So she understood the knowledge that was happening, and she wanted to make sure her little boy got it too. And so for me, like you said, my parents were always like, okay, you're going to summer school, but I got good grades. You're going to summer school, but I got good grades. It didn't matter. So I was in summer school every single year. Until I went to college, pretty much. And so it's like, those things about, for you to truly be free, like Frederick Douglass said, it is about education. It is about understanding what a lot of people don't want you to know. And this is a perfect example of that, right? Being able to kind of go in there and do the research, uncovering stories that people were trying to keep to the side. So yes, part of it is in the back of my mind, and then part of it is like, nah, I'm putting it out there.
Just bring it right to the forefront. Yeah, I don't think I have a single uncle who hasn't told me that I won't be free until I free my mind.
Absolutely.
So it is. I think it's a beautiful story. Made more beautiful by being through the eyes of a child who's not necessarily innocent, because we don't actually get to be, especially that you don't really get to be innocent. You've seen too much. But why a picture book in this way? Why this format?
Yeah. Honestly, it didn't start out as a picture book. I was trying to do nonfiction, and I tried for a number of years to do it in the nonfiction format, middle grade, picture book, kind of all over the place, because I had so much research, but then at the same time, it wasn't a lot of research, right? Because it's like, or I should say, it's not a lot of material. I'm finding it, but I'm finding the same thing in different sources, and it's like a tiny little thing. And so trying to figure out how that was going to be told and what I was going to lay focus on, because, I didn't have a lot of firsthand sources. I had a couple of diaries that were skewed in certain ways because they were white women, Southern white women's diaries who had certain viewpoints of what was going on. And
biased, you might call it.
So you're trying to look outside their frame. And so for a long time, I just kept trying to do this nonfiction story in whatever way it wanted to come out of me. And it just wasn't working. And I am someone who generally, with all of my other books, except for a book called Together We March, which is about protest movements throughout history, all of my other books started with a character. Right? They start like, I heard a character talking to me. I saw the character skipping in front of me. I saw the character being like, pss, 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 like all of that kind of stuff, And so in this case, after a couple of years of banging my head, but stubbornly continuing to try to figure it out, this little character was like, pss, pss, I got you. And so one day I was sitting there, and that first page is the first page that I wrote. It was the first thing that I wrote, and it did not change. I mean, maybe I think my editor asked me to include his name. Include his age, which I was on the fence about because I was like, he might not necessarily know his age as an enslaved child, right? And so I kind of pushed back, but that was the only thing that actually got changed on that first page. And so after Eli came along, he literally was like, psst, psst, I got you. Come on. Come on. And then every
mom, meet my dad.
I just exactly. He was like, this is my mom. My mom don't play with education. This is my dad. He's always asleep when he gets home because he's been working and he's tired. And I want to know what he's been doing. And so it was kind of all of the 3 years of doing the nonfiction research. That was all in there. So I saw everything. And I just needed Eli to tell me how he saw it. And so that's why it came to be that way. And because of Eli's age and the way he spoke to me, it felt like it could be a picture book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it works very well as a picture book. It's for kids to at the very early stages of reading to just have this information, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can take it so much further. They'll never not know where the first Memorial Day came from.
Question and ask anyone. Be like, wait a second, let's check some dates.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is. It's fantastic. I do appreciate you. And I love your other books as well. Together We March is.
Thank you.
Great. We always have that in the store.
I appreciate it. I do.
Shane.
Hi, I had a question too, so I just decided I'm going to join because thank you for this incredible conversation and this incredible book. So I wanted to say that first. I wanted to know, like, maybe why do we not know the history of holidays, and why are some holidays especially removed from the history that we know? So, like, I'm thinking of the resurgence of people knowing the history of Juneteenth and how in my lifetime that has gone from being an unrecognized, uncelebrated kind of part of our history that is now getting that, like, history, getting like more recognition, and more people are finding out about it and being able to celebrate it. I'm wondering if you know why that happened.
You know, I think there are so many different reasons. One thing about just America in general, the commercial nature of things, right? And so the holidays that we know about, sometimes the way that we know about them is very commercialized. Whether it's through the movies that we watch every Christmas, or if Easter, it's more about, for some people, the Easter egg hunt, than it is about Christ's rebirth, like all of these different things. And so I think one of the reasons is the commercialization of certain holidays. And so then the other ones get tampered down. And then I also think that there is something about what we as a nation collectively come together to embrace, like 4th of July, or like some of the other ones. I mean, Valentine's Day still stays on that commercial side of things, but you know what I mean? Like the holidays that we think of and want to commemorate. And I think of like Martin Luther King Day now. Now it is a day that actual people collectively are like, okay, let's do something on this day. Let's not just have a day off of work, where some people, that's what they do. But for other people, they're like, let's do something in memory of this man, to talk about what he was doing, to talk about different, whatever it might be. And I think that, so for a lot of holidays, we as a nation just have not done that. We have not said, this is important, not just for the commercialization of it. It's important that we know our nation's history. And then on top of that, if it is a Black holiday or has any kind of roots with Blackness, that has just been tampered down for generations, right? That has just been something that is not kind of relevant to quote unquote mainstream. So it's not, it has not been noticed by some. I'm not going to say by all, but by some. And so, and that some, unfortunately, are generally the gatekeepers of, what we view as holidays. I hear you. I know you hear me. I know you hear me. They're like, preach it. No, I'm just kidding. So I think that that's one of the reasons why. And I think with Juneteenth, especially because of all of that is happening right now, and because people are tired and have had enough, and they're like, no, I'm about to tell you about my history, and whether you listen or not, I'm going to keep on telling you. And so and there are a lot of people that are now coming to a place where their eyes have been open to a lot of things that have been going on. Their ears have been open to things. And so there's just, I think, just a shifting in mindsets with some of this stuff. And I was on an event last night, and they were like, well, what about the people who don't believe you that this could have been the first Memorial Day? And I was like, unfortunately, those people aren't going to even look at the basic math of dates, right? They're not even going to look at the fact that 10,000 people marched together, whether or not you want to acknowledge that this is the first day. It was an important day, right? It was a very important moment in American history. And a day like this for this commemoration did not happen again for years. 2 women going to decorate a grave site or something like that is not the same as 10,000 people stepping out of their homes to in remembrance, And I think it's just, again, about continuing to tell these stories, shining light on different aspects of story and different community stories that relate to that holiday. You know what I mean? There are so many holidays that we don't look to see how other people celebrated within the scope of the holiday itself. And I think more of that needs to happen.
And I mean, thinking about scope, like 10,000 people, if you live in a city, like that may not seem like a huge amount of people, but like that's my entire hometown. Like that is everyone.
It's a lot of people. And then to think about the fact that the majority of those people were Black at a time when they were not supposed to be congregating anywhere, right? They did, that was back then. If you were Black people, you were not supposed to be gathering like that. That was just not, that was a no. And it was, ingrained for some people, but other people were like, nope, not today. And so, yeah, it's one of those where I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the process of the illustration, like how it was like working with the Illustrator? What because some of your other books aren't as heavily illustrated as this, so I was wondering, was this a fun new process?
So I will tell you, with most picture books, you do not get to have any contact with your illustrator.
Zero?
Publisher will, okay, so there are a couple of scenarios. The publisher might come to you and say, we have these people in mind. Do you have any thoughts? But most likely they may still have the final say. Then you might have a really great editor who says, Leah, I'm thinking about these people. What do you think? I tell them what I think and why. Then they're like, okay, I got you. We're going to go check to see if they're available. And they will actually go with the person that you're interested in. Or you might suggest some people or suggest a style, and the publisher is like, no, we're thinking this route instead. Or, yeah, okay, we could do that, but we're thinking this person instead. And so for this particular project, they really wanted to go with Floyd. And I love Floyd, so it wasn't like twisting my arm in any way. He's a wonderful human being. He's an amazing artist, right? And so I was like, okay. And so in this case, what was unique was that I do know Floyd. And so even though they keep you apart, Floyd and I texted and asking each other.
We will always find a way.
So in this particular case, we did have some conversations, and he gave me peeks of things, and my heart would fill up, and so, but that is not always the case. So for my book, A Day Together We March, I didn't meet the illustrator until we did an event together after the book came out. So we never spoke. Sometimes you will do something called like an illo note or an art note in your manuscript where you will say, this is kind of what you need to happen on this page. And only if it's really important. Otherwise, it is up to them to kind of create. A really good friend of mine, E.B. Lewis, always said to me, you know, now it's my turn to get in the sandbox. So I'm going to take your sand and I'm going to create castles. And so it's like my time to step back. And so that's one of the reasons why publishers like to keep you apart. On a book that I have coming out in January called Daddy Speaks Love, which is with E.B. Lewis, because he is a dear friend, we collaborated on the whole thing. So that was, you know, that's a treat. So being able to do that has its blessings. But I also do understand why sometimes they want to keep you separate, because you as the author might be like, no, that's not what I was thinking. No. But the illustrator might have something, you know, wonderful in mind that you hadn't even imagined.
So is Eli as you pictured him, as he appeared in your hand?
No, I gotta say, he did a really good job. He did a really good. When I saw him, there's actually an illustration that didn't make it in the book, and I cried. It was the first one that I saw, and I just cried and cried because I was like, that's Eli. That's him. So yes, he did a wonderful job.
Perfect. He did. There are some spreads in there that are gorgeous.
Yeah. He did a wonderful job.
Do you have any special plans for like celebrating Memorial Day?
You know, I have been in I won't say a writing rut, but so many things have been happening that I haven't been able to work on this story that I really want to work on. So this weekend, I'm working on this story that I really want to work on. So that is my plan.
Perfect.
It's my absolute plan.
We do have a couple of comments from the audience. So we have Devin saying, wanting to thank us for the conversation, mostly you, Leah, I think. But Cliff as well.
It's two to tango.
And that they are writing a review of A Day for Rememberin for their blog. And Carrie was asking if this will be taped and available later. And for anyone watching right now, yes. So this will become a video, and you can show it to your students, to your classroom, to kind of help with the discussion, help with the education. So you can find this video on our Facebook or on our YouTube, and you can share it with your students if you were off today. If the students are having a longer holiday weekend, they can find out on Tuesday why they had that long holiday weekend. Yeah,
absolutely.
Perfect. Excellent. Great.
I'm trying to think of another question.
I know I did thoroughly enjoy the book, and it is one that I will be giving as a gift for a while now.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, it is. Yes, just flipping through. There's some just absolutely gorgeous spreads.
Yeah.
It is beautifully illustrated. Like, I just am wowed by how fantastic it is. Like,
this is the portion where we just gush.
Yeah, I know. There's no more questions. Just gush.
He really did. Because it is one of those things, like going back to that illustrator author relationship, you are holding your breath. You know, I worked on this for a number of years, and you have this idea in your head, and you're kind of going along in your little hole, like, you know, creating the words, and then it's taken away from you. And you have no idea how someone else is going to receive your words and what they're going to do with them. So you are literally like the whole time, and you don't exhale until you actually see the proofs of the book. And sometimes even then you don't exhale. You're like, wait a second, that's looking a little crooked. So in this case, I really got to exhale, and I also got to smile, and I also got to cry, so it was wonderful. Yeah.
So what do you have in the pipeline? Are you researching something? Has something caught your eye?
I am someone who is so curious, like curious to the point where it's kind of not a good thing sometimes, because
all those summer school.
I got all these things up and open, and I want to like tackle them, but I don't know how. So like I said, Daddy Speaks Love comes out in January. I have another book that hasn't been announced that comes out, I think it's March, another picture book. And then I have another couple books that haven't been announced that come out in 2023. And then a book called Your Voice, Your Vote comes out in 2024. And so I have those. And so, you're doing copy edits and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm working on another middle grade. And I'm trying to get these characters to act right. And I should know by now, they don't do what I want them to do. They're like, don't you know? Don't you know? But I'm trying. Stubbornly this weekend, I might just put my hands up and say, okay, lead me. All right, I'll just lead me so I can get some words on the page. And so I have a number of things in the pipeline. I've been very fortunate and very blessed to be able to just keep telling stories. And so I feel like if I could figure out how to bottle time, I'd have more. But it's one of those things where some stories take me. My first novel, One Shadow on the Wall, took me 10 years. My second one took like a month to write a really bad first draft, right? And then a couple of years to revise The Magic in Changing Your Stars. And then certain books took, a couple of months. Other books like Together We March started as a 600-word poem. So when you look at Together We March and you say it was a 600-word poem, this is not a 600-word poem. That book took a lot more research. It was like researching 25 different books.
Wow.
Yeah, that one was a lot. That one was a lot.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
But now you have it.
I do. I have it. I have it in there. Unfortunately, with me, I have like memory issues. So sometimes stuff gets a little scattered and I just need to pull the book off the shelf to be reminded what I said.
Just to shake them loose. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. So it's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. So how easy is it, or more specific, how hard is it to distill all this heady research, all this academic work that you were doing for a younger audience, to make it, palatable, to make sure that it sticks, so that there's like a foundation of knowledge going forward, so they can do what you do.
So let's put it like that. If you put it like this, if you think writing for children is easy, like, when people are like, oh, go write a book for a kid.
Oh, no.
No. Because the thing about so Together We March is a really good example for a number of reasons. But for me to understand what I was trying to say in 650 to 700 words, I had to write 12 single-spaced pages, or 20 single-space pages, or 30 single-space pages on one event, right? I had to write that for me to make sure that I understood all the parts, all the different aspects, all the people, all the things. And it wasn't until I understood it could I then go back and distill it down in this, and it's not even the simplest form, but distill it down to the most essential elements for a child reader to get even more curious to go learn more. And it was like that process. It was literally, I wrote hundreds of pages to come back to say, okay, this is what The most important thing in that 30 pages is this. The most important thing in that 12 pages is this. The most important people in those 20 pages are these people for this event. And so it just was a process over time. And this wonderful writer, I was at this event and I probably was looking a little bit haggard and cray and all kinds of stuff. My eyes were probably crossing because in my house, my poor dog was weaving around books and piles of paper and like all kinds of stuff that was tipping over. And she was just like, just remember, you are a storyteller, not a historian. And so when I remembered that, I was like, the essentials for this story, right? Even though it is nonfiction, I am crafting it in a way that it is a story being told about this event. And so every time I just went back to the 20 pages, the 12 pages, the 30 pages to think about telling that story in a way that kids would be curious to learn about the next march or to go dig up some more about the march that they learned. So that's kind of how I look at and approach any of the subjects. Like with Day for Rememberin, it was 3 years of researching, it was 3 years, like that image of the kids. Because I live in DC, I was able to go to the Library of Congress to look through photographs, right? That was almost 40 years later. And you know what I mean? Like, but that image is used over and over. If you Google the first Memorial Day, you will see that image over and over and over again. But because I was curious, I was like, why is there never any attribution of like this photograph? Like, why is there never any information other than courtesy of Library of Congress? And so that got me curious to dig to find out what it was really about. And so that's how I approach anything, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I'm like, okay, what do you need to know, Leah, so that you can relay it to somebody else? So that's why, yeah.
One last quick question from the audience. So Carrie says, our students often wonder where authors find the inspiration for the stories they tell and knowledge they share through historical fiction. And I wanted to add on to that, like, do you have like advice for students as to where they can find stories that they should be telling?
I think that this is one of those things, like when I do school visits and presentations, when I was growing up, one of the things with my parents, who are amazingly supportive people, when we were young, they used to take us on trips to see, sites where different people did amazing things that looked like us. And they always spoke about understanding your possibilities because they knew that we weren't always seeing them on TV. We weren't always seeing them in the books that we read. And so they always, every single time, they would always say, okay, we're about to go find it. We're about to go see it. Like when someone told my brother he couldn't be a cowboy because he was Black, they were like, get in the car. We drove from Massachusetts to Denver, Colorado to go to the American West African American Museum, Cowboy Museum. Go see the cowboys in this tiny little house, right? But they were like, we need you to understand. And so one of the things that is really important when you are looking for stories is to be open to the possibility of story, right? Because you don't know what you're going to find. If I had said to myself, Leah, go find a holiday story, like, you know what I mean? I might have never come across this. But because I was open to the possibility of finding a story and finding something, and I was curious about what I was seeing, I went to go dig about a picture. And so I think more than saying to yourself, I want to go write about this thing, unless it's something that you absolutely know you want to go write about, then go do the research to find that. But if you're just kind of looking around, it is about being open to whatever possibility stumbles your way. And just asking questions about what that thing is or was, how it happened, who was involved. Start small. Don't think of like the larger piece. Start in the smaller pocket of it all and just kind of follow the little dots and until you find something that you stay curious about and there's a question you want to answer. I think the best way to really start a story is to have that question why, that reason why. And then you're kind of answering it. Every sentence, every paragraph, you're trying to come back and answer what that reason why of this story is. And so that's what I would say.
Well, on behalf of Left Bank Books, I want to thank you so much for this incredible event, this incredible book. And reminder to the audience, you can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, find out about all of our incredible events. We have done a lot of celebrity story times. We have several more planned, 2 at least for June so far. So maybe more, who knows?
When you say celebrity story time, I'm like, oh my gosh, who is here?
I know, it's you.
Like, that's not making sense to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, who do you have coming?
It is you. You did. It's on the front of several books. You are a celebrity.
I was like, oh, I wonder who's coming. Thank you all so much for having me. It was so much fun to join you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Of course. Bye, everyone.
Bye.